help us explore the next frontier of cross-border payments, we're pleased to welcome senior executives from Corpay and Mastercard. Hosting this discussion is Peter Renton, Fintech influencer, podcast host, and the founder of the Fintech Nexus conferences. Please welcome Corpay's Group President for Cross-Border Solutions, Mark Frey, Mastercard's EVP for Commerce and New Payment Flows in North America, Mike Kress, and Peter Renton.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, mate. All right, let me turn this around a little bit so I can see you guys. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Let's just get right into it. Quick intros, and then we're going to dive into discussion because we've got a lot to talk about. One of the hottest areas, I think, one of the most interesting areas in fintech today. So, Mike, why don't you lead us off? Quick intro.
Love to do it. I run commercial and new payment flows for Mastercard North America. So that's everything commercial card and money movement related, including cross-border payments and the great partnership we recently solidified with Corpay.
My name is Mark Frey. I'm the Group President of Corpay Cross Border. I run our cross-border business internationally. We effectively help businesses move money and manage FX risk around the world and grow their businesses internationally. I've spent my entire 25-year career in the non-bank foreign exchange business, and certainly excited by the prospect of change in this marketplace.
Yes, and change is going to be a theme of our discussion today, I believe. So maybe, Mike, let's kick it off with, when you're talking to clients about cross-border payments, what are the biggest pain points they're experiencing today?
I love that question, right? I think first and foremost, when you look at cross-border payments, there's still a lot of friction in the flows that are taking place. So whether it's an on-ramp flow to a new currency, whether it's an off-ramp flow, and whether it's multiple correspondent banks in between or multiple networks, it all comes down to transparency is not at the level it should be at, efficiency is not at the level it should be at, and ultimately, there's too many haircuts and too many hops that are taking place. That's a lot of what we hear. Price transparency, transaction status transparency, efficiency, and really access and inclusion. The last one that we really hear about is security. And increasingly, we see more and more fraud creeping into various payment ecosystems, and cross-border is no different. For Mastercard, right, we look at the 10 billion endpoints that we can reach across 200 countries, across 150 currencies, as a real activation opportunity, not only for the clients that we work with every day, but for the technology partners. And one of the reasons I'm very excited to be at Fintech South is, for us, it's really about being an enabler for the incredible use cases and incredible new ideas that are coming out of a group of financial technology companies, where we can handle the back end and the plumbing. Corpay can handle the back end and the plumbing. We can provide core services that then use cases and innovation can be built off of. So that's a little bit about what we're hearing in cross-border payments. We're addressing each of those areas, and then we're really looking for partners to bring into that ecosystem.
Right. And so, Mark, let's just talk a little bit about the differences between business-to-business cross-border payment flows and business-to-consumer. I think you guys you work with both. How do you see this playing out between those two categories?
Yeah, it's a great question. Certainly something that I think there's historically have been stark contrasts in the user experience between the consumer-driven market and the business-driven market in cross-border payments. And I think we're seeing now finally a blending of that user experience, where the expectations of the consumer that are real-time, that are near costless, that are much a much greater focus on speed and transparency, those desires are bleeding into the commercial market. And I think there is an expectation of that consumer-type user experience becoming part of the payment ecosystem for even large ticket transactions in the wholesale space. And so we see some of the same themes now emerging of the real-time payment nature, trust, transparency, the ability to track payments. And the way that we think of it is, we think of it that we're in the outcome business for our customers. Our customers don't come to us and say, I'd like to leverage stablecoin, or I want to have a real-time rail. They simply say, I'd like to move money to my vendors. I want to make it as quick as possible and as costless as possible. And our job is to skip those correspondent steps in between, or to provide transparency and tracking capability, and to achieve the business outcome, irrespective of the underlying technology.
Right, gotcha. So when we're talking about the next frontier, I mean, we're talking about multiple different payments rails, right? We've got, like, Mastercard has had its network for, obviously built up over many decades, and, there's been a primary payments rail that people have used throughout the last, several decades. But the next frontier is not going to be just one payments rail, right? I mean, talk about how you're sort of thinking about building out beyond your core bread and butter.
Yeah, happy to, and you're absolutely right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about multi-rail, right? And Mastercard has historically been known as a primarily card rail company, but for decades, we've actually had multi-rail capability, especially in the area of cross-border. When you get to cross-border, sure, you can absolutely tap, swipe, dip your card, right? And you can do card not present. But account-to-account transactions make a ton of sense within those flows, especially when you're talking about B2B supplier payments, also when you're talking about remittance and sending money home. And so we've invested a great deal, not only in making sure that we have an account-to-account infrastructure, but more importantly, it's what are the services that we can layer into those rails that still protect against fraud, that still drive speed and efficiency, and that ultimately create transparency to price. Mark called it out really well. There's so much opportunity to drive automation and speed and efficiency and security in payments in general, especially cross-border. And all of that doesn't just tie to a card, it is multi-rail. So we see ourselves as a multi-rail payments company, and then we have incredible partners who are obviously multi-rail payments companies that we work closely with.
Right. And I want to do a deep dive into that, but before we do, maybe we can just talk about the partnership. Mark, I mean, I think it was earlier this year, the big announcement that you guys had received an investment from Mastercard. Tell us a little about how you are partnering today.
So it's really a two-front effort ultimately. So we've been a user of the Mastercard Move real-time payment rail network product for a sustained period of time. We use that on the back end to move money ubiquitously for our customers. And we saw this as an opportunity to sort of blend our networks ultimately, to bring our capability from a large ticket FX wholesale market and servicing financial institutions, blended with the real-time account capability that Mastercard has, and take that combined go-to-market and tackle the financial institutions market, where I think we're targeting our services towards tier 1 global money center banks that need to move money to the emerging market world, as well as the regional bank that still needs to expand and grow its G10 capability. And I think between these two organizations and the networks that we've effectively been able to bring together through this partnership, we've got that now full service capacity in terms of the consumer, large ticket, wholesale, B2B, B2C market, and to have that all through one point of connectivity is super powerful.
Right. Okay, so I want to just dive right into stablecoins. It's one of the hottest topics in fintech or in all of technology today, and it's something that there's been a lot of hype around, but in some emerging markets, it's actually been in use for many years now. So maybe we could I'd love to get your sense on both of your sense on this, but let's talk about stablecoin use cases today. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at stablecoin use cases today, more than 90% of stablecoin utilization is for settling out of crypto trading platforms, right?
Okay.
So that is, long adopted and it's expected, it's known by everyone in this audience, but it's still over 90% of the use cases, right? Then there are individuals and organizations that are holding stablecoin, because if you can hold a stablecoin in a currency that is less volatile than the currency that you currently are domiciled in, whether you're a business or a consumer, then there's opportunity to hold balances in stablecoin that are going to retain their value in a more neutral basis, then see that volatility. That's sort of the next big use case that gives us a next few percentage. The promise of stablecoin is the ability to settle cross-border transactions on a neutral currency in real time. And that's what Mark and I and others get really, really excited about. But the reality is that we're not yet at a place where we've solved for the efficiencies and transparency and speed and security of going from fiat to stablecoin. And we haven't necessarily solved for the speed, security, price transparency of going from stablecoin back to fiat when people want to use it. And so we're a little bit nascent in the payments ecosystem, but at the end of the day, Mastercard supports stablecoin as a currency. So through our partners, you can have a Mastercard that's tied to a crypto balance, including stablecoin. We settle out with our issuers and our merchants if they want via stablecoin. So we see this as an incredibly exciting technology. I think when it comes to cross-border payments, it's about getting realistic about where are we at in the fiat to stablecoin conversion and how much can stablecoin really be used for redeemable commerce if stablecoin is what you're holding. So incredibly exciting, early days, definitely going to be a technology jump forward as it gains adoption.
So at Mastercard, are you somewhat agnostic to how stablecoins are used versus, because the way I look at it is, you've got the network, which is, as you said, 10 billion touch points around the world. How people move that money, are you agnostic to that, or are you how do you view it inside Mastercard?
So we're agnostic from the standpoint that stablecoin's a currency, just like the Great British Pound is a currency, but we're not agnostic from the standpoint of stablecoin is based on a new technology. And there's opportunity there to bring stablecoin to bear to make cross-border payments more efficient. And there's one final area I want to touch on with stablecoin, but also just with cross-border payments and the work that Mark and his team do and the work we do at Mastercard. You had asked me, what am I hearing from my customers? And I gave you that answer. But there's all sorts of still under and unbanked people and organizations. And a lot of this is about financial inclusion, right? How are we making funds more accessible? How are we making participation in the financial ecosystem more accessible? And stablecoin actually helps with that and helps to extend that reach.
Yeah, so I think one of the super exciting points, picking up on what Mike has said, is there are certain jurisdictions in the world where access to financial markets is limited, access to US dollars is limited, and stablecoin can be the primary mechanism to drive global financial inclusion for large parts of the population that haven't historically been able to participate in financial markets.
Right, because I was in Mexico City not that long ago, and I was there on a Friday afternoon, and I saw the lines of people lining up outside the ATM because they've got their pay and they want to take it all out in cash, because a lot of those people, they don't want to keep any money inside a bank. And I'm just wondering if maybe their on-ramp, or maybe what they're thinking about is we just don't trust this. Is that stable coins is a way to kind of bring those people into the financial system, you think?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. In the developed world, we sort of take trust in our financial institutions for granted in many cases. There are always pockets of the economy that maybe take an opposing view to that. But certainly in parts of the developing and emerging market world, the frontier market world where global banking is much less developed, that is not something that you can take for granted. The stability of your currency as a store of value, as a unit of account, to hedge against inflation in hyperinflative market environments. So there are a tremendous number of use cases that really can modernize economies, allow for strengthening financial performance of economies, and inclusion, ultimately, that can be fostered by stablecoin and some of these technologies.
Right.
That's what we get really excited about, right? Is extending the financial ecosystem.
Right. And as you say, at some point, I don't know when it's going to happen, but in the next decade, I hope you would agree that we're going to be able to send money instantly for very little cost to anyone in the world, whether it's domestic or international, right?
And I think the thing that we really still need to solve, and Mike touched on it, is that on-ramp and off-ramp friction that exists, the expense, the cost, the traditional finance's view of that as a high-risk market activity. And it's still a significant pain point. The dirty little secret of every native stablecoin provider and crypto exchange is that they're still heavily reliant on fiat currency payments and the conversion to US dollars to be able to then access crypto markets. And we really are trying to, I think, focus significantly between the two of us of trying to provide those rails a less friction-filled experience, a more cost-free experience ultimately as well, so that you can enable that technology.
So do you have people in-house at Corpay developing for a stablecoin ecosystem?
Yes, stablecoin and blockchain-centered payments, yes.
And the same with Mastercard,
Right.
And what I want to, again, use this forum as an opportunity to mention is, and we want to work with all of the financial technology companies out there that are looking to leverage that capability. I believe that financial technology companies can do unique differentiation on use cases in certain verticals and user experience. Let us, with the plumbing we already have established, empower you and enable you and get you to market faster, right? And stablecoin is just another acceleration mechanism around that.
Right. Okay, so we've got to talk about the other really hot topic in tech, and that is AI. We've got, we have a world today where, AI kind of touches on everything. I use it every single day. I'm sure you guys do as well. So let's maybe just take us through, we're talking about this as the next frontier. So we talked about this in our call we had the other a few days ago, but I want to touch on agentic commerce, where you've got businesses using AI to not just find suppliers, but to having AI agents actually make transactions. Now, I would argue we're not quite there yet, but I'd love to get your perspective, Mike. How close are we, and what are you seeing?
So we're there. It's happening today. It's happening on behalf of consumers, and it's happening on behalf of businesses. But let's peel back the onion a little bit and take a look into it. I would also share that recently I keep getting hit when I'm watching like YouTube Saturday Night Live sketches with this whisper ad that's telling me that I'm behind in AI and I really need to get with it. And I feel like they're maybe profiling me, but I'm not quite sure.
Especially if we're nearing 50 or over 50.
It's kind of a creepy whisper too. So a few things about it. First of all, if you think about agentic commerce, you can really simplify it by thinking, hey, what did I used to ask someone to do on my behalf that I can actually now use a programmable AI agent to do for me? Let's just think classically about travel, and I'll use that as from a consumer example, and then I'll bring it to life a little bit more. So historically, I used to go to a travel agent, call it 30 years ago, and walk into their office, and they'd find me the right vacation package deal with a flight and with airfare and with a hotel, and that travel agent would set that up for me. Then OTAs came along, online travel agencies, and I could do all of that through the algorithms that they had and the search and the data that they had. Now I can go into insert AI model here, right? Go to any of those engines, and I can actually send the AI out for me and give them parameters to say, hey, I want you to look for airfare, hotel, and car that fit these parameters, and I don't want you to transact until that price actually hits that level, and empower that agent to do the transaction on my behalf. Right? And ultimately, I now have someone 24/7, I have an agent looking for that best travel package for me, and I can actually have 4 agents, 1 air, 1 flight, 1 hotel, and 1 who's watching all of them and coordinating them. That's live today, right? You can go do that through agents today. Here's the nuance. It's difficult for merchants to tell if it's actually me behind the scenes doing that. Enter Mastercard. Because Mastercard has all of our tokenized credentials and our ability to do validation of the actual consumer or business behind the scenes, we can make sure that merchants know that, no, this is a valid actual transaction that's happening from this consumer and or from this business. And so you take that simple consumer use case. Now I'm a small business, and I'm looking to acquire inventory when it drops its lowest in certain markets so that I can bring that into my distribution channel, my supply chain, and then maximize price on that. Instead of having a buyer, instead of doing my own searching, I can have AI agents do that. And then the use cases just go on and on and on.
But I imagine the volume running through Mastercard right now is minuscule.
Oh, nascent. Right? Yes, it's absolutely nascent, but it's there. Like it's
not zero.
It's there. It's not zero. It's there.
Right. So what about a Corpay? What are you like? Maybe you can talk about what you guys how you're using AI inside Corpay, but actually for customer-facing things as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we've really been focused on is trying to provide a 24/7, always-on user experience for our customer to do not just payment processing, but to do thinking and analytical work ultimately. So in an old environment where one of our customers would ring up one of our advisors and an analyst team and begin to share data via an ERP back and forth and begin to analyze the risk that sits within their currency portfolio, we're now building agentic AI into our risk model so that our customer can do that at any time without interacting with one of our analyst teams. Right. They upload their data. Our thought processes are plugged into those models ultimately to go through and walk through the various steps and to interact with the customer to both respond to feedback that's provided, but also make decisions and present alternative strategies for the customer to execute in real time. So for us, it's fantastic in that it provides us much more scalability of our organization. Right. We're not limited by headcount in time zones. But for our customers, which are increasingly working globally or working at 11 o'clock at night when you have time to log in and actually begin to focus on running your business, they can access these capabilities when it's most convenient for them as opposed to within regular business hours. So it's begun to transform our business ultimately and taking us to sort of a new level of client service.
Right. So then can you guys take that forward then a little bit? I mean, are we going to be living in a world where the AIs are doing transacting primarily, or do you think the human is going to really be at the center of things for a long time to come?
So, yeah, after you were going to go ahead.
Yeah, I think humans will be at the center of this for some time to go. I think there will always be a place for relationships and human contact, yes. Right. You know, we think of these tools as the means by which to scale the productivity of an individual human within our business.
Right. Yeah, it's a collaboration, right? And ultimately, we've seen through multiple revolutions that have taken place from like the Industrial Revolution, right? You think about when the internet came out, I used to have World Book encyclopedias sitting on my shelf, right? As growing up as a kid. Yeah. The audience here is like, what's a World Book encyclopedia?
That was a source of truth in like the 70s and 80s.
It was. So look, I think that humans will always be at the center to the extent that we want to do that as a society, right? I think it's a more society existential question of how involved do we want to be versus how much do we want things to take over. But ultimately, it's human design and origin that's going to be in it. I want to touch on one other thing, because we did go right to agentic. Mark and my organization sit on so much data and real-time transaction flow that it's impossible for a human to comb through and find fraud vectors and attacks and trends. So we've actually been using AI for well over a decade, just on all the fraud and cybersecurity, right? Agentic's new, and now we've touched on that, but I also want to make sure people are aware that AI, with the ability to just go through reams and reams of data 24/7 and form those patterns and those threats, it's a critical dependency for both of our businesses.
Right, and the real-time decision-making that it enables ultimately. So the world of transaction monitoring has moved from a post-transaction 24-hour cycle to now real-time transaction monitoring, so we can identify risks, identify fraud as it's happening or being attempted on the network, which is a fantastic advancement for the business.
Right, for sure. Okay, so for the fintechs in the audience, I'm curious what you would say to them when they're thinking about cross-border payments. Where are the opportunities today? Do you, like, you're obviously working, Mastercard does a lot of work with fintechs. What are you seeing as the places where fintechs still have opportunity?
My gosh, so I would say that even the way the question's worded, it's not still have opportunity. Like, the opportunities are endless.
Right,
and I'll go there, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
For that reason. It is all down to, in my mind, use cases and user experience. All over the world, individuals some that are underbanked, some that are unbanked, some that are fully participating in the financial ecosystem, small businesses in the same categories, governments, large businesses. There is friction today in just the way they get into the financial system and use it in a way that's contextually meaningful for them. Right? Even just think, I know this is going to sound kind of nuts, but imagine that you run a doggy daycare. And for some reason, as part of your doggy daycare, you want to import dog videos from multiple countries, and you're paying suppliers for that content. Like, there's a financial technology company that could design that whole application that only targets doggy daycares to do that. What, like, it's that's where the win is.
Yeah.
The win is choose your niche, choose your audience. And it could be an audience that's tens of millions of people. It can be an audience that's 10,000 people. But that's where fintechs can continue to drive innovation and use cases. We're not in that business, right? We're in the business to help then enable that use case with all of the money movement, all the know your customer, all the anti-money laundering, all the fraud, all the cyber. That's what we're here to do for you. You go be the ones that actually innovate and do those really impactful experiences.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree with that. That the focus should be to solve that friction point, that pain point in a specialized way. And then, to a certain extent, you can partner to commercialize that solution. Right. And that's where Mastercard comes in with the power of the network, and that's certainly what we focus on as well, is we can help commercialize the flows and make it economically viable, but it's really solving that customer pain point and then replicating that across different customer segments.
Yep. Right, so then what advice would you give a fintech founder who is wanting to get on the radar of someone like Mastercard? I mean, what's it, there's probably lots of fintechs who have solutions in the cross-border payment space that would love to talk to you. How do they get on your radar?
Yeah, so Mastercard has a full team of account management and business development folks in each of the markets around the world that are absolutely contactable to get on our radar and start having that conversation. We have very clear mechanisms in place to onboard fintechs and enable them and empower them. So I would encourage all of you, we're not just a big brand in the sky, right? We're 35,000 plus people who are looking to partner with you and enable you so that you can have a massively positive impact on the world. Right. So reach out to our teams and we'll be there to answer the call.
Right. Okay, so maybe in closing, I want to ask a question. I feel like I took my son started college yesterday, so it was a big deal in our family, and I tell him that he's worried about AI, as every college kid is these days. But what I was telling him is that there will be businesses started in a decade that are going to become very big businesses that are going to provide a product. They're going to see a niche. Like the innovation, to your point, it doesn't stop, right? It's going to continue on. But I'd love to kind of you to touch on, if you look out a few years, where do you see cross-border payments evolving to? I want to hit both of you up, but I know we didn't plan this question, so I just wanted to hit you up at the end. So tell me what you think.
Yeah, but Mark, we'll start with you.
I think embedded in our everyday lives, embedded in our technology, that it's not a separate workflow or a separate thing that you think of. It just happens, and it's within your native ecosystem of your financial planning or your ERP or accounting package, whatever the case might be, that I think of increasingly. Our desire and our focus as a business is to embed our network and our capability directly into those platforms.
Okay.
And MasterCard's taking a very similar approach. If you think about your experiences today or your son's experience, right? And congrats on the
Thank you.
The start. They're used to being able to go into insert money movement app name here and like a Venmo and just be able to send money real time to their friends.
Right.
Their expectation, and Mark touched on this, consumer experience informs B2B expectation of how things should work. Their expectation and where this will get to is that it'll be just as easy for a $100 million business to send a payment to their Thai supplier and their Malaysian supplier and their Philippine supplier, real time with full transparency at low cost. And that whole system, that whole ecosystem will bring the services to bear to make sure that it's transparent, that it's fast, that there's guaranteed receipt of money, and that it's secure.
Well, that's a good place to end on it.
Maybe we'll finally be able to kill checks in the United States.
That would be fabulous.
Okay. Mike, Mark, thank you very much. That was a fascinating conversation.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.